The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique subscribers on demand on YouTube and on iTunes and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio. Well, we're distributed coast to coast across the United States of America to 12 million households via cable. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. Boaz, did you know that shortly after the September 11th, 2001 attacks here in New York City, they started carting off the debris to the Fresh Kills landfill, the largest landfill in probably the world, certainly in the United States, on Staten Island?
I didn't know exactly where they started taking the debris, but what comes to the first thing that comes to mind, Gary, about that is it's a tragedy because I hate to say this, now I'm not going to be graphic. I'm going to try not to be graphic about this, Gary, but that debris contained flesh and bone, and to cart it off to a landfill, I think, is a disgrace, if you ask me.
Well, what's even worse is not only did they cart it off to the landfill, and they did sift through it in an attempt to recover remains, but there are still remains sitting in that garbage dump. And the families want to take those remains, find them there, extricate them, and bury them in an appropriate location. And the city is balking, won't let them do it. Can you believe that?
There's another problem that is connected to this too, Gary. And again, I'm trying not to be too graphic about this, but it's not just flesh and bone. Who's to say what part of the debris contains blood?
Well,
and if it does,
yes, blood's hard to.
And if it does, Gary, yeah. I mean, still that's something that should be buried, if you ask me, in a proper way.
Well, anyway. We're going to have two of the family members here tomorrow, two of the leaders of the fight, Anthony Gardner and Diane Horning. They're also going to talk to us about their attempts to get a proper memorial at Ground Zero. They're also going to talk to us about the environmental impact of 9/11. They're also going to talk to us about how the redevelopment of the World Trade Center site has huge security lapses. They're also going to talk to us about the continuing problem that the rescue and recovery workers are facing with health issues post 9/11, and the fact that those who do not reside here in the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut cannot get assistance for their medical problems as a result of their exposure to the toxic fumes. Anthony Gardner and Diane Horning here on News Talk Online on Paltalk.com. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock New York time. Do not miss this one, because this is of extreme importance. Because, listen, if there's another, God forbid, terrorist attack, I just hope that we are better prepared on how to handle the aftermath. That's all I got to say. Speaking of terrorist attacks, Boaz, there was another rocket attack today in southern Israel. A short-range Qassam rocket fired from the Gaza by Iran-backed Hamas killed a student at Sapir College in Sderot. Am I pronouncing it right this time?
It's pronounced Sderot.
Sderot. Listen, in addition to the rocket that killed this student in his car, 35 other rockets were fired into the town. Houses were hit. A factory was hit. People were hurt. On Monday, a 10-year-old kid was severely injured by a rocket. On Monday, an 8-year-old kid's leg was amputated from shrapnel from a rocket. This year, it's only February. All right, almost March. January, February, 2 months. 800 rockets and mortar shells have been fired from the Gaza. Take a guess, Boaz, since August 2005, when Israel withdrew all of its citizens and military from the Gaza. Since August 2005, do you have any idea how many rockets and mortars have been fired at Israel from the Gaza?
I'm sure there's a number, but I can take a pretty wild guess. There's probably over 7 or 8 thousand rockets.
4,500. Since the withdrawal. Now, here's what I don't understand. Um, Israel is attacked. Israel rebuffs the attack. Israel grabs territory. The nations that hold that territory don't want it back. They don't want to deal with the Palestinian refugee problem. Israel assumes parental control over the territories. One could argue they haven't done a very good job of it. That's a fine argument we could discuss sometime. They demand that the Israelis get out because all we are saying is give peace a chance. And we can't have peace so long as the expansionist Israelis are in the Gaza. So the Israelis in 2005 withdraw from the Gaza. Okay, world, we're doing what you asked us to do. We withdraw from the Gaza. Now let's talk peace. Let's have a two-state solution. And what do the Palestinians do? They send over suicide bombers. Suicide bomber after suicide bomber after suicide bomber. Stop me when I'm off track and not telling this story accurately. So what do the Israelis do? They put up a fence / wall. Some areas it's a wall, some areas it's a fence, to stop the suicide bombers from coming over. Well, it stopped the suicide bombings, but they started screaming, apartheid, apartheid. You can't put up a wall, apartheid. And what else do they do since the withdrawal? They take the very communities that the Israelis built, the settlements that they built in the Gaza, and they use them as launching pads for rocket attacks. Tell me who really wants its two-state solution. Boaz, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the so-called leadership of the Palestinians, and I don't think it makes much difference whether it's Fatah or Hamas, they want the destruction of the state of Israel. Why doesn't the world understand this?
Let's take a step back here, Gary, and analyze, first of all, who Israel is dealing with. Once upon a time, years and years ago, there was Yasser Arafat, who is now deceased, and it was understood by Yitzhak Rabin, then Prime Minister of Israel at the time, that was assassinated. But while he was in office, it was understood between him and Arafat that he would be dealing with Arafat, and Arafat was to be, and then the single entity that represented all the Palestinian people that lived in Israel, whether they were, whether they were in the Gaza Strip or over the Green Line in the West Bank. But today you have a situation where, as we all know, the Palestinian people split up into two entities. You have the Hamas that are mostly in control of the Gaza Strip, and then you have the PLO with Mahmoud Abbas, who is mostly in control of the West Bank. So who does Israel deal with on a political level? And how do you deal